Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. I'm Ethan Evans. Here today, I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes on who managers promote and, more importantly, why those choices happen. And the reason to do that, of course, is so that you can try and be the person who's chosen. Now, anytime we talk about managers, I'm generalizing about thousands or tens of thousands of people. You may be a manager who doesn't act the way I say, or you may know one. This is, however, the most common set of patterns. So, with that said, quickly, here's my background. I was educated as an engineer. I spent my first 12 years working in startups, some vintage pictures of me. I then spent 15 years at Amazon working on a succession of products you know well. I helped start Prime Video. I helped start Amazon Studios. I built Amazon's App Store. I worked at their acquisition, Twitch, which is video game streaming, and I finished my career building Prime Gaming. At the end of 15 years, I realized I enjoyed coaching people and helping them with their careers more than I enjoyed running those great businesses. And so I switched. Um, I switched to helping people hire, resume reviews, and basically helping other people grow in their careers. So that's what I do today. This QR code will link you to some of my resources if you need more. I'll leave it up for just a couple more seconds, and then we'll jump in. So we have a very short, focused agenda today. It's four things. Covering the somewhat obvious that manager support is essential if you want to grow your career either as an individual contributor or as a leader. Then we'll talk about who managers promote, how to be chosen, and we'll go into Q&A. So simplest agenda possible. For a lot of you, this will seem self-evident, but it's worth pointing out. Number one, at most companies, Google might be an exception, a couple other companies might be an exception, but at most companies, the actual action to kick off promotion consideration for someone is owned by the manager. So clearly, if the manager is not on board trying to move you up, it's not going to happen in one of these systems. And I would challenge you, it's like a employee fantasy that somehow your great work is going to get you promoted, even though your manager doesn't think you're ready or particularly like you. Like, that just never happens. I'm sure there's some legend somewhere of the person who got promoted, even though their manager didn't want them to be. But I have never, ever once heard it or seen it. So we have to get the manager's support. How are we going to do that? Well, method number one is to start your own company. Remember, you can always promote yourself to CEO by leaving your job. But if you're not going to take method number one, then let's talk about the most common methods. Why do managers promote? They have four reasons. The thing I'm going to bang away on with you today is the first two reasons are the ones we think about, and the last two we either don't think about or we call politics or we call favoritism. And they're not, or at least they don't have to be. But to go from the top, the first reason managers promote anyone is they need someone in a bigger job. They need a more senior person. They have an opening. They see that you have the capability, or they need to hire someone to manage a group, to be the engineering lead, to be the senior designer, the senior PM. But the point is there's a need. Where do the needs come from? They come either from the growth of the business or from someone else quitting or from you changing what you're able to do. And we'll talk about that more on the next slide. The second criteria is pretty simple. They look at you and they feel, oh, Ethan could do that job. Jason could do that job. Picking other people here, Ben, Vivian, etc. You can do the job. Great. This is what we all think about. Am I doing good work? Am I ready? The problem is there's two other criteria. Do they trust you? Now, we'll define trust on the next slide in depth, but trust is really the question of, do I, as a manager, I, as a vice president at Amazon, do I believe I can rely on you? Are you going to do the work? Are you going to show up? Are you going to be easy to work with? Do you have good judgment? Are you going to loop me in when I need to be looped in? Or am I always going to be worried about your area? So again, if I don't feel I can rely on you, if you prefer the word rely to trust, they can rely on you. If I don't feel I can rely on you, I'm never going to choose you for a bigger role because all I'm doing then is increasing my worry. Now, this last criteria is where people really get uncomfortable. And that's why I put like in quotes. This doesn't mean you need to be your manager's best friend or you need to go to golf or the opera or whatever with them. What it does mean is you have to have enough of a pleasant relationship that I don't dread seeing you. That, see, when I promote someone, I'm going to spend a lot more time with that person. They're more senior than they were. They have more responsibility. And broadly speaking, most managers, consciously or subconsciously, are not going to choose to spend more time with people that annoy them or that they find difficult. Now, there are a very few managers who will say, well, I have a completely different style than Ethan. His way of getting things done is often jarring to me, but he does good work. So I'm going to promote him anyway. I'm going to rely on him and move him up anyway. These managers exist, but they are very rare. Much more commonly, we're all familiar with the idea of unconscious bias in the form of when it comes to diversity. We're all familiar with the idea that, oh, there might be some bias. Well, another type of unconscious bias, basically, if I enjoy your company, I'm going to tend to view what you do more favorably. And if I don't enjoy your company and my reaction is like, oh, Ethan at my door again. Oh, that guy. It's going to be very hard for me to see your performance positively. And so how likable you are, how decent your relationship is, biases how people see your performance and your ability to do the job. So rarely will I say, well, Ethan's doing great work, but I'm not going to promote him because I don't like the guy. Instead, I'll end up telling myself, well, Ethan does some good work, but man, he also really stresses everybody out and he disrupts our meetings. He's not ready yet. I will rationalize it. Okay. So now we'll go into depth on what you can do. For everybody who's here now, if you want to ask questions, put them in the chat. And other people, with 225 of you here, I'll only be able to answer a couple questions. Scroll through the chat, find the ones you love, like them, put a smiley on them, a thumbs up, and Jason, who's my co-host, at the end will call out the best, most popular questions for me. So this slide is the entire meat of what we're going to talk about. Every word in italics is about how you do the things that you need to do. So it's the same slide with more added. And this is how to be chosen for promotion. First, there isn't that much you can do directly to create need. You can't make your company need more people. Or need higher level people. Need comes in two forms. Number one, you can be at a company that's growing. I often explain growth as like the escalator at an airport or a mall. If the company's growing, you're standing on a set of stairs that are going up. Now, you can also climb those stairs to move even faster. You can even if you stand still, though, you're still moving up with the growth of the company, meaning if on a relative basis you just stay equal with your peers, you're still moving up. And lastly, even if you take one or two steps backwards, you're going to get to the next floor anyway. Unless you turn around and run downhill, that's going to carry you up. This is why growth is so valuable. People will ask, where do you go to get growth? Well, right now, most of the big tech companies are not growing much. There are divisions in them that are, but you generally are looking outside of big tech to other industries to find growth or to startups. However, growth is also periodic. Some of the companies that aren't growing right now will resume growth in the relatively near future. If I had a crystal ball for when, I'd be working on the stock market, not talking to you. But the other thing you can do, of course, is try to stand out so that you get the opportunities. This is standard performance advice, which is take on the harder, messy projects that let you stand out. This isn't a standard performance advice session, so I'm not going to go deep into that. To do the job well, though, there are three basic things you need to do. Number one, do the work. That's where it says perform. You're all already, if you're taking the time to listen here, I'm going to assume that you work hard at your jobs. The second thing you can do is get feedback, either from your manager or from others around your manager or both. You can try to learn, what are my gaps? What else could I do? How else can I help you? My standard advice here is something maybe Jason can throw in the chat called the magic loop. The idea, the process here, some of you who know me will have heard this, is you go ask your manager, how can I help you? And then you do that thing. And that creates a relationship with your manager. Finally, some of you are uncomfortable with how to publicize your work. You're like, oh, I don't want to brag. That's not humble, etc. What you do instead to publicize your work, if you're uncomfortable doing it yourself, is you send out notes. They can be in Slack, they can be in email, they can be in some other forum where you talk about the great work you and one of your coworkers did. So I see someone here named Steven. I could send out a note that says, oh, Steven, Simon, and I finished this project this weekend. You should see the results. And then next week, I say, oh, Jeff and Alex and I met with this customer. Here's what we learned. Well, you'll notice the common point of those two emails or communications is me. So even though no one will ever get down on you for talking well about Jeff or Alex, okay, no one will ever get down on you for doing that. But in talking about them, you're talking about yourself. So if you need a tip to take away about how to get your accomplishments noticed without seeming like you're bragging, share the accomplishments of your peers and what you all did together. That's a simple way to get around that. Now we're going to get to the two hard ones, the two that people consider to be politics. If you want to get promoted, your manager must trust you. The first piece of being trusted is to understand what's important to your manager. What is their style? What are their pet peeves? What are their priorities? What are their highest values? This is not unlike dating someone where you try and understand, does the person I'm dating like Italian food? Do they like to go to the movies, or do they like to stay home and watch TV? And do they hate Italian food and like Greek? Managers have styles. The easier you fit into their style, the better, but you also have to understand what is most important to them. Do they want to see big accomplishments, or do they want to see a lack of errors? Do they want to see debate and new ideas, or frankly, do they mostly want you to take their suggestions? To build trust is actually a tricky word to define, but one working definition of it is consistency over time. When I see something happen again and again, I begin to trust in it. So for your manager, you have to be reliable. Why? Because I'm not going to give more responsibility to someone who keeps me awake at night worrying. And by the way, I've talked to thousands of managers. All managers I've ever talked to divide their team into people I worry about and people I mostly don't worry about. You've got to be on the mostly don't worry about list. And that means building up a trust with them. Now, some people say, oh, well, this is favoritism or this is politics. No. Favoritism in politics exists, and I'm not denying that. But here, what I'm talking about is understanding what's important to your manager. What do they need to see? If you don't know how to figure this out, you can talk to your manager, but the other way to figure it out is look at who they do trust. Look at who they are promoting. Look at who they have good relationships with, and either talk to those people or study what is it they're doing. What is it? Why is it the manager or the skip level manager is giving more responsibility to Jason and not to me? Why are they doing that? Once you know that, you can go do it. Now, the last part, this is the other one where people hear favoritism, where it's not necessarily there. It's the like part. Now, the usual example I give people here is this. Think about someone you don't like. It can be anybody. It can be a coworker who annoys you. You don't have to hate them. Think about somebody you don't like. Assume you're in a meeting with them and they drop their pencil and it rolls under your chair or under your part of the table. They say to you, hey, would you pick up my pencil? Be honest. A lot of times your first thought when you don't like them is, get it yourself. It's a simple thing and you may choose to do it out of politeness, but your honest thought is, I'm not really here to help you. Now we switch to someone that you really like, a friend of yours, whether at work or not. The friend says, hey, you know what? I know today's Thursday and it's short notice, but I need to be out of my apartment by June 1st. And it's today is May 30th. Could you come over tomorrow night, which is Friday, and help me carry boxes so I can switch apartments overnight? Now, this is a huge ask on short notice, but because it's a friend of yours, what do you think? You think, all right, I'll see if I can do it. I'll see if, my significant other will give me a hall pass, or we can come together and we'll do that for a couple hours because it's a friend. Managers are no different because they're human beings. Now, you don't have to be best buddies. Someone once, a child once of a well-known author once called him out and said, is this a real friend or a work friend? At work, we have lots of people who are acquaintances that we're friendly with. They're not going to be our lifelong friends. When we leave that job, we might stay in touch, we might not, but you at least need to have that cordial, positive, easy to work with relationship. How do you do this? Try not to disagree. Try not to disagree and fight with them if that's not something they welcome. It doesn't mean, by the way, never disagree. It means don't make it a conflict. And if they prefer to handle those things in private, for example, do it in private rather than in public. So, short class, lightning lesson. Let's go straight to the summary. Managers promote solid performers that they trust and enjoy. The important thing that pisses a lot of people off, and some of you are in the audience right now being like, damn it, I hate this. Good work alone is not enough. Because there's 245 people here right now. All of you are good workers, which means there's somebody else working for your manager or your skip level manager or your director, or whatever, who's a good worker. So beyond that, you need to have a positive relationship with some trust. You have to be someone they like. If you want more, I love this topic. It's kind of all I do in different forms. I teach a long format class on this. The next cohort's in 2 weeks. It's my top rated leadership course. I spend 12 hours on executive performance and what it takes, what it looks like to become an executive. People, as you can see on the slide, we had people from every major company. We have over 500 alumni, and they've rated it very well, right? This course is rated 4.7 stars out of 5. And these are some of the testimonials, if you go to the page, that you'll see from all kinds of people on it. So I'd love to see you there and help you more. That said, we hold time for Q&A. Hopefully some people have upvoted some questions. Jason, what would the audience like to know?
All right, here's how it's going to work. I'm going to paste it in the chat and I'm going to read it verbally, and then Ethan, you answer. First question is from Shruti. How do I objectively know if my manager trusts me?
How do I objectively know if my manager trusts me? Great question. You judge them most by actions. You can have a conversation with them and ask them, of course, you can ask them directly and say, hey, I know it's important that you feel you're able to rely on me. Are we good there? Is there something else you want to see? But what you really look at is their actions, which is, are they investing more in you? Are they giving you bigger responsibilities, or are they mostly quizzing you on your current work and checking in if it's going to get delivered? So that's the big difference is, are they leaning into you or leaning away? And if they're mostly micromanaging your delivery and checking in on you, they don't trust you. Versus if they're handing you new things, they do. So for example, I was coaching someone earlier this morning, his boss, who he has a not perfect relationship with, just gave him a new responsibility. That's a clear sign that his trust is improving. Okay. And, you know, a highly trusted person, I will still check in on their current work occasionally. It's all about the balance. If that's all I'm doing, I don't trust you. If I'm never giving you new work or new challenges or new opportunities, I also don't trust you. It doesn't mean that I'll never ask about work status again. Okay. Next question, Jason.
All right, next question, Deanna. I have trouble managing up because it comes across as inauthentic or obvious, but I know it's important. What are tips on managing up without looking like you're brown nosing?
Oh, great question. So managing up without looking like you're brown nosing. The key to managing up is figuring out what's valuable, understanding what your manager values, and focusing on, and by the way, it's not just your manager, it's your skip, it's your whole chain. I have a whole class. It's a shorter class. It's much simpler. It's lower cost. It's available on demand, just titled Managing Up. So you can check out that class if you want. But to summarize, the right way to manage up is to understand what your manager needs by asking them and by watching what they do and then delivering what they need. Now, sucking up is more in the form of inviting your manager to golf or inviting them to dinner or just telling them how right they are. Those are sucking up actions. Managing up is about providing clear communication about business value that advances the company and helps your manager feel successful. Here's a secret, again, from talking to thousands of managers. I ask managers all the time, how often does someone on your team come to you and say, hey, I was just wondering how I could help you take a worry off your plate? The answer is that's very rare. And just by doing that, you set yourself apart with a manager. Another way, if you like, a better way to remember it that some people joke about once I tell them is, as a manager, when you come into my office, you're doing one of two things. You're either bringing me a problem and you're going to drop a bag of dog poo on my desk and be like, okay, Ethan, we have a problem. You deal with it. Or you're coming into my office and saying, hey, Ethan, I saw we have a problem. I'm going to go take care of it. Or what problem can I take care of for you? And in that case, you're a poo taker. And you can imagine I'm much more likely to invest in and help poo takers than poo bringers. And at some level, that is how a manager's office door is, that's how it works. You're either bringing me a problem or you're taking one away. Which one are you going to do? Next question.
Ethan, this one's a follow-up from Ben on managing up. A company with strong hierarchy where going outside the chain of command is not encouraged. How do you get around that?
Well, part of the reason it's not encouraged is your manager is afraid of what it's going to mean for them. Good managers want to be known for having great employees. So one thing you want to understand is what would it take for the manager to want to showcase you, to want to tell their executive about you? And are they doing that for anyone else? The second thing is, why is you have to taking a step back. It's a great question, which is why I'm fumbling with it a little bit. It's all about your EQ, your emotional IQ, to understand why is the company that way? What benefit are they getting from it? Why is that a norm? When do they make exceptions to it? How do you earn the trust of the skip manager? What is in it for your manager? Like, what are they afraid of? / when do they get benefit from exposing you up the chain? Because it looks good for a manager to have strong employees. It does not look good for a manager to have employees that are out of control or that are off topic. So you basically go up the chain with your manager's approval and buy-in, which again is why having your managers buy-in is so important. It's also true, and people always ask me this, if you're working with a manager that you just cannot earn trust with, who, due to their own damage, you've tried improving your performance, you've tried volunteering for extra work, you've looked to see who they support, and it turns out no one, they're just a terrorist, you may have a bad manager. And I left several managers that I didn't fit with in my career. You may have to do that too. I had a couple of truly awful managers. I had a couple of managers. I had several good ones. Obviously, I did the best under the good ones. And some of good, in quotes, is how well you fit. A couple of my managers that I called kind of they were great managers for other people. Their style and my style was too far apart. So we never fought, and I did okay under them, but I did better when I found someone who valued who I am. So those are the kind of moves you're looking for over the long term. And yes, there are some managers who are different forms of terrorists. Okay, next question. We probably have time for one or two more.
All right, next question is from Sunny. How do you establish rapport and be likable when your manager is remote?
Oh, great question, Sunny. Bonus points. So I love good questions. Thank you. Remote is hard. Number one, even though this goes exactly against remote, I'm going to say it up front, travel when you can. Human beings are inherently personal in the sense of it's hard to dislike someone you've had dinner with. It's harder anyway, right? Because from a primal safety thing, we don't sit down and share dinner with someone we think is going to club us with a stick later. And so social settings allow us to build trust and rapport in a way that work is more difficult. But the second thing you do remotely is you show interest. So you build a relationship by checking in on the manager, asking how you can help them, asking how their weekend was, asking about them as people, asking what's keeping them awake at night, asking them what they're happy about. The classic book on this, it's dated, meaning it's old, is Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. That book sounds like it's about being sleazy. Oh, I'm going to win friends, like I'm going to sneak and fool them into being my friend. But that's not actually the content of the book. The content of the book is how to build relationships, and it's sort of timeless wisdom from a guy who is brilliant at it. So if you want to build them, that's how you do it. Remote, you have to take extra effort. All the things that might happen organically in an in-person workplace, you're going to have to do a little bit the hard way. Basically, you try and start and end meetings with a little bit of small talk in order to go beyond the formal. The name of the book, again, is How to Win Friends and Influence People. Somebody else says Crucial Conversations is also golden for this. It is. There's lots of good books on building relationships. One more question, maybe two more.
All right, Ethan, let's do two more because they're similar. Okay. Let's take them one by one. Priya, if your style is too different from your manager, is it best to move on or keep trying?
My answer to that is yes. Yes to what? Well, on the one hand, my own personal philosophy of both managing upwards and downwards was to try to be a chameleon. So what does that actually mean? Well, a chameleon changes its color to blend into the background it's around. It doesn't change who it is. It's still a chameleon. It's still a lizard, but it's willing to blend into its surroundings. So as a leader or as an individual, the better you are at adapting your style and saying, hey, you know what? I prefer phone calls, but you like emails. I prefer in person. I prefer to work alone, but you prefer we work in teams. The more you're able to flex, the more places you'll be successful. So that's half of it. It is worth trying to learn to be flexible in your work style as opposed to be rigid. We all know that person at our workplace who's like, I only do this. I only do this type of work, and I need to be left alone in my cube. I only do this kind of work, and I'm never online before 10 a.m. I don't do meetings before that. Rigid people only move up or only are kept if their value is so high that you're like, you know what, I'll put up with your prima donna traits. Well, why shoot yourself in the foot that way? Now, it doesn't mean you have to always be up in the middle of the night, but the more you can work with other people's style, the better. Now, that said, working far outside your natural style puts an emotional tax on you, and you will eventually get tired. So, to avoid that emotional tax, ultimately, you want to work with people that you fit with easily. And so when you have the chance, you move. The key, though, is the more you're comfortable with the chameleon thing, the more you can wait for the right move as opposed to having to run away, right? At some point, the chameleon's like, well, I can't blend into a hot fire. That's going to kill me. I have to flee. So you run. But the more flexible you are, the fewer times you have to do that, because when you run, you often run to something that's just bad in a different way. What's the second half of the question, Jason?
All right, final question. This one's from Shruti. What if your manager has too many direct reports and they're already focused on developing and promoting someone else? What do you do?
This is the I'm stuck in line problem. And it's a real problem, particularly in low growth environments. I'm stuck in line. What do I do? How do I get out of line? Well, there's a few things. Number one, you can make an honest assessment of how long are they going to be busy with the other person. Am I really that ready for promotion? Like, in other words, if I'm a year from promotion, or let's say 2 years, and the other person's up for the next cycle, are they really in my way? Or can I wait my turn? Second, what can I do to help my manager, either help that other person get promoted faster or help my manager's team grow? Is there anything I can do to change the game I'm a part of? And then number three is you may have to leave. But your options are look at the timing, and are you having this manager had too many reports? It probably means you don't have a close relationship with them, because managers who have too many reports essentially have an inner circle and an outer circle. They have the people that they're investing in and the people they're not. Can you figure out how to jump from one circle to another? If you can, you should do that. If you can't, you should bail out. And so with that, this was a lightning lesson. I don't want to keep people extra long. It's super interesting. I see someone I've collaborated with in the past, Mario Girard, and the TPM blog here as one of the viewers. If you're a TPM, I'll just give Mario a free shout out. His blog is awesome. And with that, I thank you all for coming. I hope to see you in my other course. Please follow me on LinkedIn. It's a great place to stay up to date with what I do. And I hope you got a lot of value out of this. Go apply the couple lessons and you should be you should be more successful, because that is how managers do things. All right, I don't want to start a cascade, but I admire Nat for putting his hand up and trying. So Nat, what's your question?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Appreciate it as always. I'll be quick. So, I mean, we know tech industry, I've been here for 15 years. You commented a little bit high level on other industries. Have you seen or come across people in tech moving into other industries? And if so, what are those? Just curious.
The biggest one right now is banking, different types of fintech. So they're going from tech to fintech or fintech to finance, because those industries are doing well. That said, in general, people who are in one of the big tech or high tech companies are highly sought at other companies, because those other companies think that if I hire a couple of Google people, maybe my stock performance will start being like Google, or maybe I'll get some of the secret that made Google, or fill in the blank, Meta, Oracle, et cetera, so successful. So broadly speaking, those other industries like to get talent. Now, they don't like to always pay for it, because depending on where they're at, the comp at big tech may be a lot more. So what you often have to do is you both take a higher title and a somewhat lower paycheck, but that may give you a much bigger scope to hone your skills for the future or get you into a fast growth environment. So those are your options. And with that, I'm going to stop the recording.